Namaste. Now, this is Vinayak. I am back with your social chapter, Nationalism in India. That is, in the earlier session, we had discussed till non-cooperation movement. Now we are going to move ahead. This is the part 2 session of the chapter. So I am going to share the slides. So what were the steps towards civil disobedience movement? So after the non-cooperation movement, what was the situation in our country? As Gandhiji had called off the non-cooperation movement because of Jallianwala Bagh issue. Then again, they had the Khilafat movement, which was in the increased way, and then he could bring all the Hindus and Muslims united under one umbrella. And then now we shall move ahead with the situations. In such a situation, two factors shaped the Indian politics in the 1920s. The effect of worldwide economic depression in as demand for agricultural goods fell and exports also reduced. So what happened? As we all discussed earlier also, that what happened before that, because of the epidemics or the droughts and all, many of the crops were failed, and due to that people were not able to pay the revenues, and the demand for agricultural goods fell and exports declined, prices fell down more than 50%. Prices for all the goods, they fell more than 50%, and found it difficult to sell their harvests because there was no money in rotation and pay their revenue. They were not able to pay the revenues. By 1930s, the countryside was in turmoil. After the World War I, the Great Depression came, and it took almost 10 years, 1 decade, and everything was under turmoil. World economy fell, and Indian economic conditions were also very poor. The new Tory government here means Tory is the name of the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister of Britain, constituted a statutory commission. He constituted a commission which contained no Indian member under Sir John Simon. Under Sir John Simon was to look into the functioning of constitutional systems in India and suggested a change. All the changes he suggested. What is that statutory commission? The Tory government, the British government in England, they wanted to change some of the constitutional functioning system in India, and they wanted to bring different laws, and they wanted to change the law here, and they wanted to change everything as per their decisions, and no Indian member was called or suggestions were taken from the Indians. But when Simon Commission arrived, and this was called as Simon Commission, what changes they wanted to bring, this law was called as Simon Commission. Why they called it as Simon Commission? Because it was under a judge called Sir John Simon. When he arrived in India in the year 1928, it greeted with a slogan, Go back, Simon. You see in the picture here. They greeted him in the way of black flags and black posters naming that go back, Simon, go back. All major Indian parties had took part in the demonstration in an effort to win them over the Viceroy. Lord Irwin, at that time, Lord Irwin was the Viceroy, announced in October 1929 a vague offer of dominion status for India in an unspecified future and a roundtable conference to discuss a future constitution. So after all this happened about the Simon Commission, then Lord Irwin, the Viceroy, he announced in the year October 1929 a vague offer called dominion status. What do you mean by dominion status? A dominion status is nothing like they showed some dreams to India, to Indian people, to the people of India. They showed like a star on the sky, that the star is yours. In that way, they showed. Means, what is it? In a simpler way, I am telling you, what is the meaning of dominion status? That is, they promised the people of India that they are going to give us freedom. They are going to make us free. They are going to make us independent. And they are going to leave the country. That promise they gave. But when, where, how, they did not tell. But only they showed like a chocolate. I am going to give you. But how? When I am going to give you? That was not specified. So in that way, they gave an unspecified future. They did not promise any date or time or nothing. Only they said that they are going to give us freedom. That was a promise. That is called the dominion status. That is, there is no fixation of anything. Just to make us happy, to feel us happy, they told that they are giving us freedom. And then they said that a round table conference will be held to discuss about the future constitution. So this did not satisfy the nationalist leaders, especially the Congress leaders. The radicals within the Congress became more assertive. Radicals means somewhat violent natured leaders in Congress itself, like Subhash Chandra Bose, Bhagat Singh. Such people were very much radical nature because they never believed in non-violence. So in December 1929, under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Lahore Congress formalized the demand of Purna Swaraj. During 1929, for the Congress party, president was Jawaharlal Nehru. The Lahore Congress was formalized. That is, every year they used to have the session in various parts of India. So in 1929 December, the Congress session was held in Lahore. Lahore is now in present Pakistan. And they formalized the demand of Purna Swaraj. What is Purna Swaraj? Purna means full, complete. Swaraj means independence, freedom, or full independence for India. And they wanted to declare a date. So it was declared that 26th January 1930 would be celebrated as Independence Day, when people were to take a pledge to struggle for complete independence. So that was planned. Do you know? See the date, 26th January 1930. That was called as Purna Swaraj Divas. So this to commemorate this day, we celebrate our Republic Day on 26th January. But this attracted a very little attention. But the Purna Swaraj Divas, where people were to take a pledge, and it attracted a very little attention. So Mahatma Gandhi decided to relate the idea of freedom to more concrete issues of everyday life. So again they thought of something else. So then the Salt March. Now this is the beginning. On 31st January 1930, Gandhiji sent a letter to Viceroy in Irwin stating 11 important demands, some of them of general interest and some of them specific. The most stirring of all was the demand to abolish salt tax. What is salt tax? See, salt was manufactured in our country only because India is a peninsular country with lot of sea coast, and we had lot of sea water, and salt was manufactured here only. And then even for that, the British had implemented salt tax. So Gandhiji was demanding to abolish salt tax. His letter stated that if the demands weren't fulfilled by 11th March, the Congress would launch a civil disobedience movement. But Lord Irwin did not negotiate. He did not take it very seriously. So Mahatma Gandhi started his famous Salt March accompanied by his 78 of his trusted volunteers. What do you mean by trusted? The close people of Mahatma Gandhi, that is main Congress leaders. And then he started his Salt March along with his 78 trusted volunteers. The march was fixed for 240 miles. That is from his Sabarmati ashram to the seacoast town Dundee. So that's why we call it as Dundee March. So here that distance was 240 miles, and it was distance was very much more, but every day they used to fix up maybe some 10 miles. They used to walk on the way. Wherever villages used to come, Gandhiji used to address the people, address the gathering, and then from those villages also people used to join in the march, and they used to join them. So the march was over 240 miles from Gandhiji's ashram in Sabarmati to Gujarat coastal town of Dundee. The volunteers walked for 24 days. Means every day they walked for 10 miles. About 10 miles a day. Salt was something that was consumed by the rich and poor alike. See, it doesn't mean that rich people eat more salt, poor people eat less salt. Not like that. Salt is an essential thing for our body. So whether they are rich or poor, they have to eat alike only. And it was the most essential items of the food. Now just imagine, without salt, can you eat something? Can you stay for one day? No, it is very difficult. So the tax on the salt and the government monopoly over its production, Mahatma Gandhi revealed the most oppressive phase of the British rule. So with this, Mahatma Gandhi could tell the people that how oppressive the British are, because they are taking tax for the common salt also. So this movement, what happened? It attracted people in large numbers. Thousands came to hear Mahatma Gandhi wherever he stopped, and he told them what he meant by Swaraj and urged them to peacefully defy the British. So then many people joined this movement, and wherever he stopped, he used to talk to them and peacefully defy that, not to go violently, but we need to peacefully defy by the British. On 6th April, he reached Dundee and ceremonially violated the law by manufacturing salt by boiling seawater. So on 6th April, he reached Dundee, and then there many people, they boiled seawater and manufactured salt. That was the beginning of the salt march. After this, all over the country in many coastal towns, this salt march was conducted, and many of the Congress leaders were arrested by the British police, and lot of lathi charge and other things took over. This Dundee March marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement. The civil disobedience, see, every time there is a question, how non-cooperation was different with civil disobedience movement. In CBSE board exam, many times this question was asked. So you need to understand this part, what we are going to continue with it. Now, the civil disobedience movement was different from non-cooperation movement in the sense that it is not only asked people to refuse cooperation with British, which was done in non-cooperation movement, but also asked them to break the rules. As the movement spread, foreign cloth was boycotted, liquor shops were picketed. Earlier I told picketing means not allowing them to function. Peasants refused to pay taxes, that is revenue, and chowkidari taxes. Chowkidari taxes is nothing but protection of the forests and villages. So like watching them, like watchman. Chowkidar means a watchman. So these taxes were collected from the villages. So village officials resigned, and many places forest people violated the forest laws, going into reserve forest to collect wood and graze their cattle. Worried by these developments, the colonial government began arresting the Congress leaders one by one. So in non-cooperation, only the people were told to not to cooperate. But in civil disobedience, again, they were asked to break the rules also. So, this led to violent clashes in many places. Why? Because many Congress leaders were arrested. When Abdul Ghaffar Khan, a devout disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, he belonged to a town called Peshawar in the previous, before independence, it was in the Punjab province. Now presently it is in Pakistan. He was a staunch follower of Gandhi. And for your information, after we got freedom, when in Pakistan was made separated, at that time, because he belonged to Peshawar, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan lived there only, and in the 1980s he passed away. But even he was given Bharat Ratna. Even though he became a citizen of Pakistan, he was given Bharat Ratna by Indian government, and also he was called as Frontier Gandhi. He was called as Frontier Gandhi. And during this civil disobedience movement, he was very, very young and very devout disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. And he was arrested in April 1930, sorry. Angry crowds demonstrated in streets of Peshawar, facing armed cars and police firing. Many were killed. A month, and also he was also arrested. A month later, when Mahatma Gandhi himself was arrested, industrial workers in Solapur. Where is Solapur? In Maharashtra. Attacked police posts, municipal buildings, law courts and railway stations. All structures that symbolize the British rule. That is only the government structures. They started attacking people. A frightened government responded with a policy of brutal repression, and they started arresting all the satyagrahis. Peaceful satyagrahis were attacked by the police by lathi charging, and women were beaten up, children were beaten up, and around 1 lakh people were arrested. In such situation, Gandhiji once again called off the movement and entered into a pact with Lord Irwin on 5th March 1931 and consented to participate in Round Table Conference, which was to be held in London, and government agreed to release the political prisoners. If all the political prisoners they were released, then Gandhiji agreed to attend the Round Table Conference in England. In December 1937, Gandhiji went to London for the conference, but returned disappointed as the negotiations broke down, because the negotiation was not successful. While all this in India, the government had begun a new cycle of repression. Ghaffar Khan and Nehru were both in jail. I'm very sorry. It is in December 1931. It was wrongly typed as 1937. So then Ghaffar Khan and Nehru were both in jail. The Congress had been declared illegal, and they were not allowed to do any meetings or any gatherings, and series of measures had been imposed to prevent meetings, demonstrations and boycotts. With great apprehension, Mahatma Gandhi relaunched the civil disobedience movement, but it had lost its momentum. People just were not showing much interest. Now, how participants saw this movement, how we saw in the non-cooperation movement, now we shall just see even about the civil disobedience movement. Different communities participated in the movement for different I wanted you to see the slide, for different reason, and saw Swaraj in the different perspective. In the countryside, the rich peasant community, that is the landlords or the zamindars or the patidars or talukdars, what we are calling, being producers of the commercial crops, were very hard hit by the trade depression and the falling prices, and found it impossible to pay the government's revenue in demand. Now, these rich class farmers or the zamindars, they wanted to avoid paying the revenues because of the Great Depression. So, they wanted to support this movement. The refusal of government to reduce the revenue demand led to widespread of resentment, that is anger among these people. The rich peasants became enthusiastic supporters of the civil disobedience movement, organizing their communities and at times forcing reluctant members to participate in the boycott programs. So they became enthusiastic, they started supporting this movement. For them, the fight for Swaraj was the struggle against high revenues. Means the peasants wanted the revenues to be reduced. But they were deeply disappointed when the movement was called off in the year 1931. Without the revenue rates being revised. There was no revision. The British government did not take it seriously, or they did not reduce the revenue. So when the movement was restarted in 1932, many of them refused to participate because they could not get any benefit. So they did not participate. The poorer peasantry. The poorer peasantry, many of them were small tenants cultivating lands. They had rented from landlords. As the depression continued and cash incomes dwindled, dwindled means reduced, the small tenants found it difficult to pay their rent. They wanted the unpaid rent to the landlords to be remitted. They joined a variety of radical movements, often led by socialists and communists. So they wanted all the landlords to leave about the rents. Unpaid rent should be stopped. They should not be asked. So all these, so they joined variety of radical movements like other socialist parties, communist parties, etc. Apprehensive of raising issues that might upset the rich peasants and landlords, the Congress was unwilling to support no rent campaign in the most places. So rich peasants, why they want to lose their income? When the Congress is supporting the poorer peasants, the rich peasants they were not willing to support the no rent campaign in most of the places. We before also about the Awadh Kisan movement we studied. There also it became very violent. All they started looting the zamindars and the patidars, their godowns and their shops and all. So they were unhappy with that. So the relationship between the poor peasants and Congress remained uncertain. The business class, keen on expanding their business, the Indian merchants and the industrialists now reacted against the colonial policies that restricted the business activities. Here, the industrialists or the manufacturers who were manufacturing goods in India, they had a lot of problems. Why? Because British was bringing their manufactured foreign goods for lesser price, and they were bringing and made India a very big market. So the local manufacturers, they were losing their business because they had to pay various types of import duties, taxes, etc. They wanted protection against imports of foreign goods and a rupee sterling foreign exchange ratio that would discourage the imports. To organize business interests, they formed an Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress in 1920 and the Federation of the Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries. This is called as FICCI. Even now it is there in 1927, and also attacked colonial control over the Indian economy and supported the civil disobedience movement when it was first launched. They gave lot of funding, financial assistance, money to the Congress party, and to buy or sell imported goods. Most businessmen came to see Swaraj as a time when colonial restrictions on business would no longer exist and trade and industry would flourish without any constraints. So without any tax systems, without any import duties or export duties, without these restrictions, they can sell their goods. But after the failure of Round Table Conference, they were apprehensive of the spread of militant activities. Militant activities means lot of unrest in the country and worried about prolonged disruption of the business because of the strikes, bunds and other things, hartals, by which there was lot of disruption of business as well as of growing influence of the socialism. How about the working class? Only in the Nagpur region, there was active participation of the working class in the movement. They organized movements against low wages and poor working conditions. There were strikes by the railway and the dock workers. Dock workers means those who are working in the dockyards, and railway workers. So this was because of the low wages and poor working conditions, means there was no security. Everything was under risk. So for that reason, they wanted some movement to go on. So they supported the Congress. But the Congress was reluctant to include workers' demands as part of the program of struggle. They were reluctant. It felt that this would alienate industrialists. Because if the workers are being supported by the Congress, then the industrialists would not fund them or would not support them and divide the anti-imperial forces. Here, anti-imperial means all the people who are struggling with the imperialists. So we become anti-imperial forces. So what are the limits of the civil disobedience movement? Not all social groups were moved by the abstract of concept of Swaraj, like the Dalits and the Muslims. So the participation was very poor from the Muslims and the Dalits. Who are the Dalits? They are the untouchables. For long, the Congress had ignored the Dalits. Why? Because at that time, untouchability was being practiced in a very large factor. That was a big factor, and it was practiced since age-old tradition. Since many years, it was being practiced. So Congress also had ignored for fear of offending the conservative high caste Hindus. But Mahatma Gandhi declared that Swaraj was impossible if untouchability wasn't eliminated. It has to be removed. So he called the Dalits as the children of God. That is, what do you mean by children of God? He called them as Hari Jan. Hari means God. Jan means people. Children of gods. So he called them as Harijans. And organized satyagrahas to secure them entry into temples. Even a movement was going on at that time, and the Dalits were not allowed previously into the temples, and access to public wells, tanks, roads and the schools etc. to gain popularity among them and drag them into the movement. So he was trying for that. But many Dalit leaders were keen on a different political solutions to the problems of the community. They began organizing themselves and placing their demands. In this movement, one more great leader, our father of constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar. He also was a Dalit. He belonged to a poor cobbler family, and he fought for the rights of these Dalits. Therefore, Dalit population in this movement was limited, particularly in the Maharashtra and Nagpur region, where this was quite strong. Then next, the Muslims. After the decline of non-cooperation Khilafat movement, a large section of Muslims felt alienated from the Congress. In this Congress also, Muslims felt that after Khilafat movement, they were not given much importance. So one of the Muslim leader in the Congress itself, who was he? None other than the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He felt that they were alienated from the Congress. They were not taken care. The Muslims were not taken care. So he started building up his own way of group of Muslims. Gradually, every community organized their religious processions with militant fervor, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes and riots in various cities. Every riot deepened and distance between the two communities. So there started lot of clashes among Hindus and Muslims. So Hindus, they were more deep towards the Hindu Mahasabha. Muslims, they prepared Muslim League. Their leader was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And then lot of riots used to take place, and there was lot of distance between the two communities. That is, the unity was going away. To forge unity, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a leader of Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates if Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly and representation in the proportion to population in Muslim dominated province. So he demanded, he was willing up to give away the demand of separate electorates if Muslims were given reservation wherever Muslim population was more. By all hope of resolving the issue disappeared when M.R. Jaikar of Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed the efforts at compromise at all parties conference in the year 1928. So this was rejected by Hindu Mahasabha. When the civil disobedience movement started, there was thus an atmosphere of suspicious and disruption between the communities. Alienated from the Congress, large section of Muslims could not respond to the call for the united struggle. So when a united struggle was asked, lot of Muslims, they never responded. Many Muslim leaders and intellectuals expressed their concern about the status of Muslims as a minority within India, because Muslim population was lesser than Hindu population. So they were demanding a minority as minority. They feared that the culture and identity of minorities would be submerged under the domination of a Hindu majority. They feared that they were not being taken care. So now, the sense of collective belonging. This is a important and last topic. How did it emerge? How did it emerge? Collective belonging here means about complete India. It's our motherland, our country, our people. Like that, the collective belonging sense to the people, how it emerged, how did it emerge, we are going to learn about it. Sense of collective belonging gradually came partly through experience of united struggles. Since many years, the struggle was going on. So with these experiences, some of the sense came. Even the media means the newspapers, the folklore, and then fictions, songs, popular prints and symbols played a major role in making of nationalism. See, media means newspapers, novels, books, all these things. Folklore, all the regional songs. Like for example, in Andhra Pradesh, folklore is like Burra Katha. In Kannada, Yakshagana. Like that, every region has different folklores. By those things, and then fiction, stories, songs, popular prints, all these came in major role of making nationalism. In the 20th century, with the growth of nationalism, India came to be visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata, because we call our country as our motherland. So motherland. So a female figure that is in our heads, it is an imaginary figure. We take it like our goddess. So motherland. So a fictitious image of Bharat Mata was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Bankim then wrote Vande Mataram as a hymn to the motherland. Previously, before our national anthem, Vande Mataram was sung till the year 1911. It was our national anthem. Before Janagana Mana, our national anthem was not announced, but it is like a national anthem. In all the meetings, wherever Congress meetings or wherever freedom struggle programs were conducted, there Vande Mataram used to be sung. It was written in and it was included in his novel Anand Math, widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal especially. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abanindranath Tagore, he is one of the nephew of Rabindranath Tagore. He painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. He painted an imaginary figure of Bharat Mata, is portrayed as an aesthetic figure. Aesthetic means like a goddess. Calm, composed, divine and spiritual. So he painted the picture by which people came to know the imagination of Bharat Mata. In subsequent years, the image of Bharat Mata acquired many different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was painted by different artists. So many artists drew the picture. Now, for example, in this slide, just I am taking my cursor. This was a very old painting during the freedom struggle movement, because you see the flag in which Ashoka Chakra was there, and one more place, few days they used the charka. Okay, and before that there was no, because our national flag was designed very late, and before that a saffron flag was with the Bharat Mata, and finally now see, here you see Indian flag. But various new painters, they started painting in different, artists started painting in different versions. So idea of nationalism also developed through movement of revive Indian folklore. In late 19th century, Indian nationalists began recording folk tales sung by bards. Bards means a group of people who dance and sing in the villages, and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. So these are the things what made them to record, and they started writing, penning down in the books and then printing it and circulating to the people. These tales, they believed, gave a true picture of traditional culture that included our culture, our heritage, and uh, our sadness regarding the freedom, because we were under imperialistic rule, had been corrupted and damaged by outsider forces. So the culture what we were having, that was being damaged by the outer forces, like how education system was removed and English came into our country. So all these things. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting ballads, nursery rhymes, and many stories and all used to tell by our grandparents and all. Let this movement for folk revival. There was a revival, and history like stories of Shivaji, Maharana Pratap, they were told by our elders, and then many historical movement like Rani Jhansi Lakshmi Bai, the freedom struggle, how they struggled for the freedom. And in Madras, Natesa Shastri, one of the famous writer, published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales, the folklore of southern India. He believed that folklore was national literature. It's like a treasure for us. It was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. Means they included the history, the past, the heritage, the culture, and then they could collect all these things and bring it to the people, among the people. And this brought a sense of collective belonging. This is our belonging. So that was brought, and a lot of change in the minds of the people also came. So as the national movement developed, nationalist leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols in unifying people and inspiring them a feeling of nationalism. So definitely the inspiration came among the people. The feeling of nationalism came during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. A tricolor flag with red, green and yellow was designed. By 1921, Gandhiji had designed a Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor red, green and white, and had a spinning wheel in the center, that is the charka, representing the Gandhian idea of self-help, that is making khadi. Carrying the flag, holding it aloft during marches began a symbol of defiance. You might see the old pictures where you find all holding the flag and going for the Satyagraha movements. So, history is to unite people. Another means of creating feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. Just now I was telling you about telling the achievements of the past, like historical Shivaji, Maharana Pratap, Jhansi Lakshmi Bai, like that these great leaders, their stories were reinterpreted. The British saw Indians as backward and primitive, incapable of governing themselves. In response, Indians began looking into the past to discover India's great achievements. They wrote about the glorious developments in ancient times when art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion, culture, law and philosophy, crafts and trade had flourished. Ancient times, we had all these subjects, astronomy, everything, science, mathematics, architecture, but all was lost after the British came here. And they looked us in a very bad way. That is, they said that we are backward, primitive, all these things. But Indians, the nationalists, they wrote about the glorious moments of our ancient times, how advanced we were, how our culture was there. These nationalist histories urge the readers to take pride in India's great achievement in the past and struggle to change the miserable conditions of life under the British rule. So they tried to show the people that our misery, our miserable life came because of the British rule. So conclusion, finally, a growing anger against the colonial government was thus bringing together various groups of classes of Indians into a common struggle for freedom in the first half of the 20th century. What we saw in the first half, it was a struggle to bring various groups, to bring all the people together under one umbrella. That went in the early 1920s. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to channel people's grievances into united, organized struggle movement for independence. But as diverse group, because of so many issues, religions, then caste systems, all these things, it took a lot of time and it varied aspirations and expectations. Their grievances were wide ranging, and freedom from colonial rule also meant different things to different people, because people, every citizen had different idea. They could not come into one idea. The Congress continuously attempted to resolve differences and ensure that the demands of one group did not alienate another. So this is why the unity within the movement often broke down. So they felt that one was not being taken care. Interest was not there for one group. So all these problems were there. The high points of Congress activity and nationalist unity were followed by phase of disunity in the inner conflict between groups. In other words, what was emerging was nation with many voices, because many leaders, many groups, many leaders, many speakers, and many voices, and they wanted freedom from colonial rule, so they could not unite together. So that's why it took a lot of time for us to get freedom. Thank you, and I would request all of you to go through the textbook, study the textbook thoroughly, take a pencil, mark, underline all the key points, and make few key points, write in your notebooks, by which you can understand thoroughly, and then better, and then go with your assignments or other works. So please read the textbook. Unless you read the textbook, you cannot learn the things. Thank you.